How's it going, everyone? Sorry from Weather Storm. Today is September 13th, 2021, and today we're going to take a look at three tropical disturbances that are currently roaming in the Atlantic at this time, and also Tropical Storm Nicholas, which is currently impacting Texas at this time and could maybe strengthen into a hurricane just before landfall. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content. So let's begin by taking a look at the current 5-day tropical weather outlook provided from the National Hurricane Center. And of course, we have the elephant in the room, which is Tropical Storm Nicholas, which is currently impacting the coast of Texas and it is very close to landfall. Its maximum sustained winds are currently at 65 miles per hour. Central millibar pressure down to 1,000 millibars and soon moving northeast. So it has made that definitive turn to the east at 12 miles per hour, and it should make landfall within the next couple hours. You also have this next tropical disturbance which could come uncomfortably close to the east coast, which has a moderate chance of developing, around 50% chance. And we have another tropical disturbance which will likely become Tropical Storm Odette within the next coming days, with an 80% chance of formation over the next 5 days. So let's first talk about this disturbance, because by the way this disturbance is looking, it's looking like it might go straight towards the Caribbean, and of course that might impact land if we see tropical disturbance go in this general direction as opposed to moving northward out into the open Atlantic. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at the current water vapor imagery, and as you can see, the convection is now just starting to get off the Western African coastline at this time. We do see that there's a lot of convection associated with this tropical wave that's going to move through, and this will eventually develop into our next tropical storm, most likely Tropical Storm Odette, and we need to see a little bit more convection within the area of lower pressure to really get a definitive area where the rotation will be occurring and where exactly the center circulation will be located. And I suspect that it will be in this area because this area already has the most convection, and once it goes over the warm Atlantic water, we should see an enhancement of convection in this area, and eventually we will see our center circulation and the rotation around that center circulation to classify it as a tropical storm or Tropical Storm Odette. So it's looking pretty healthy as a tropical wave. You see that just to the outside of this convection, you see that the atmosphere is quite moist. You don't see the darker blacks, which represent drier air. As you see, the air is fairly at least unstable enough to support a lot of convection within the next couple hours and in the next couple of days especially. So we should see this develop within at least the next 5 days. It has a 30% chance within the next 48 hours, which is still a pretty good chance, despite how close it is from the West African coast. However, the chance does significantly increase over the next coming days. Now, taking a look at what is the wind shear forecast for this storm, you see that as of right now, there is a little bit of an upper level high that's over where this convection is located. I'd say it's located right around here, and as a result, it's bringing some wind shear on the southern side of this upper level high. However, the thing is that the upper level winds in this area are pretty much coinciding with the lower level winds, which is typical for the lower level winds to move further westward and come from the east, which means that despite the stronger wind shear, or at least despite the stronger level of winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere, that won't mean much in terms of how much wind shear this will experience, because both the upper level winds and lower level winds are going the same direction. So the wind shear won't be as strong to completely shear the storm apart or to completely divert the heat energy away from the center circulation. So despite this slight wind shear, it is expected to develop and strengthen into Tropical Storm Odette within the next coming days. If we were to continue to move forward, you see the upper level high begins to move further eastward and the wind shear continues. But like I said, since the upper level winds are pretty much going the same direction as the lower level winds, it won't mean much when it won't do much when it comes to inhibiting or preventing the storm from becoming a tropical storm, as that's the current consensus from the computer models and the wind shear should continue. And while I think it should at least limit, the wind shear should at least limit this storm from potentially maybe rapidly intensifying into a hurricane, maybe keep it around tropical storm strength over the next couple of days. It isn't really enough to completely prevent it from strengthening. And if this were to head into an area where the wind shear gets lighter, like the GFS model is forecasting beyond the 5-day mark, we could see this strengthen a little more, because you see that the GFS model wants to strengthen this into a 991 millibar tropical cyclone, which is around tropical storm status, maybe even hurricane status, depending on the exact size of this storm. So this certainly will likely develop over the next coming days, as it seems like the wind shear won't be much of a threat. However, the good news is that at least beyond the 5-day mark, we do see that there's going to be a little bit of an upper level low that's going to be right over the Caribbean islands, and that should create a strong southwesterly upper level wind environment over this storm, and that should weaken it quite a bit. And the GFS model wants to weaken it to the point where it pretty much fizzles out as a result of this wind shear from this upper level low located in the Caribbean. But again, I'm going super far out with this, around 220 hours from now. And even if we were to take the 7-day forecast from as of right now, you see that it's still fairly uncertain. It's not until I'd say we get around 4 to 3 days out where we do get at least somewhat of confidence, but beyond 120 hours out, the details certainly become murky. The good news is that we are seeing that the GFS model currently is expecting strong wind shear on this storm as this heads closer to the Caribbean during the later forecast time. However, there's still a lot that has to be seen. We need to see if this upper level low will actually form, or if it's strong enough to impose a strong upper level wind environment to completely prevent this storm from developing further. We have to wait and see, because beyond 5 days out, the details certainly become murky. And while the GFS model fizzles this out, the European model isn't really agreeing with that exactly, because if we were to take a look at what the European model is saying, it sort of predicts the storm to move further westward and still maintain its strength, as you see that there's that well-defined cyclonic vorticity right around the core of this storm. However, the good news is that the European model wants to take this further northward, because it expects what could become our next tropical storm, potentially Tropical Storm Peter, off the coast of the East Coast, to linger around, and that should pretty much create a weakness in ridging towards Western Atlantic, and that should pretty much force this storm to move into potentially Tropical Storm Peter if it were to linger like this. However, the GFS model doesn't agree with that forecast. However, it wants to fizzle this out. So either way, it would be good news if either of these computer models were 100% correct. But again, this forecast extends beyond the 5-day mark, and there's still a lot of uncertainty that remains. This could easily still go west and impact the Caribbean islands, or maintain its strength and impact land. So we just have to wait and see. It really all depends on, for one thing, how Tropical Storm Peter moves, because if it lingers over this area, then that should certainly be good news, because that would force the storm further northward, and that would miss out on a lot of Caribbean islands and potentially United States coast if this were to get absorbed by what could become Tropical Storm Peter. However, if Tropical Storm Peter ends up blowing out into the northern Atlantic, pretty much getting swept away by the jet stream, then we could see this storm move further southward, and it really all depends on how the upper level winds are at this point, because and there's still uncertainty regarding this upper level low in the Caribbean. So there's still a lot of uncertainty with this forecast. The good news is that neither of the computer models are really taking a major threat, but I wouldn't rule out any possibilities just yet, because I still think that we could see potentially impacts in the Caribbean, because again, I'm forecasting this beyond 5 days out. A lot could change between now and 5 days later. So taking a look at my current forecast when it comes to the track of potential tropical storm Odette, I expect this to move westward and pretty much come close to the Caribbean, because I don't expect tropical storm Peter to linger just off the east coast that long for this storm to find an opening further northward, because during the month of September the westerly winds are quite strong. So I'd expect Peter to just get swept away a lot quicker than what the European model is saying. But so I expect it to come closer to the Caribbean, and it really all depends on this upper level low to see what will happen in terms of the strength of the storm and if it will bring major impacts to the Caribbean. So that's certainly something we need to watch over the next coming days. Now, the next thing we of course need to take a look at, the elephant in the room, is tropical storm Nicholas, which is currently just off the coast of Texas at this point, and you see that it's very close to landfall at this point. Its current max wind speed is around 65 miles per hour, so it's a strong end tropical storm and close to low end hurricane status. However, I'm not sure if this will attain hurricane status before landfall, because for one thing is that it doesn't really have that much more time over water. Within the next several hours, this should make landfall, so it won't have enough time over water to develop into its max intensity. And another thing is that it is dealing with a good amount of wind shear at this time, and you could probably tell by where all the clouds are moving towards. You see that most of the clouds are most of the convection and most of the clouds are moving towards the east, and it's as a result of this upper level high that's just to the south of this storm that's bringing strong westerly flow over this storm in the upper levels. So that is certainly limiting the storm from developing as fast as it could. However, it's still a strong end tropical storm that still could dump heavy rain throughout Texas and Louisiana. So don't underestimate this just because it's a tropical storm or it may not be a hurricane, because I'm sure in Houston we all remember what Hurricane Harvey or Tropical Storm Harvey did in Houston, Texas. Despite only being a tropical storm when it impacted Houston, it caused one of the worst flooding disasters in world history. And of course, this isn't going to be another Harvey, but I just want to point out that you can't underestimate tropical storms because typically they could bring a lot of rain and flooding. Another example I like to bring up is that was very recent was Tropical Storm Ida, or even the remnants of Ida impacting New Jersey, my area, and it killed, unfortunately, 29 people in New Jersey just by the flooding alone, despite not even being classified as a fully tropical storm. So you certainly don't want to underestimate these events because it still could dump heavy rain throughout Texas and Louisiana. If we were to take a look at the current radar for Louisiana, this is how it looks right now, or by the time you're watching this video. You see that there's a lot of rain certainly around the center of circulation right now. Now the heavy rain bands are impacting Lake Jackson, Bay City, Port Lavaca, and the heaviest rain is just outside of Victoria right now. And I'd say flash flooding in these areas are likely, as the eye will make landfall somewhere around this area. And you see that the eye wall of this storm is containing just a very heavy rain bands, and it isn't moving entirely fast. It's moving around 12 miles per hour. So that rain should stay over the same area for several hours. And eventually that rain will move into Galveston and Houston, which is an area very prone to flooding. And we could see that rain extend to Louisiana because, like I said, we're seeing a strong upper level winds coming from the west. And that should push a lot of that moisture further eastward into Louisiana. So Louisiana, don't underestimate this just because you might be far from the eye, because that rain will extend outwards into the east, and that could bring flash flooding for you guys. Taking a look at the current forecasted track provided from the National Hurricane Center, you see that it's expected to make landfall within the next couple of hours. I'd say probably sometime tonight. And you see tropical storm warnings are issued extending from Corpus Christi all the way as far to the east as the border of Louisiana and Texas. This includes Houston, Texas as well. And we do have hurricane watches issued because the National Hurricane Center does not want to rule out the chance that this may strengthen into a hurricane just before landfall. And while I think that's a bit of a stretch at this point, it still certainly could happen if all the right conditions play out. So throughout southeastern Texas, make sure to pay close attention to flooding. Taking a look at the current rain forecasts over the next several and the risk of flash flooding, you see that the risk of flash flooding just south of Houston is at a high 50% chance. So I'd say definitely prepare as if flash flooding is about to happen. And I'd say even if you're in the red, prepare for a flash flood threat, because a moderate to high chance of flash flooding is something you don't want to play around with, especially in an area like Houston that's very prone to flood events like this, that's very vulnerable to flood events like this. So this should certainly be something you guys need to keep in mind throughout the southeast coast over the next 3 days. And in terms of the additional rainfall you should expect, you see that there are areas on top of the rain they've already experienced still expect to receive another 6 to 10 inches of rain. And I wouldn't be surprised if some localized areas receive around 20 inches of rain, which would definitely be devastating for a lot of areas around southeastern Texas and Louisiana. So this certainly is something you guys want to pay close attention to. Remember, if you see a body of water, turn around, don't drown, because typically the flood risk, the puddle of water is a lot deeper than what you typically expect. Now, taking a look at the storm surge forecast, and while this is a week, well, I wouldn't say a week, but while this is only a tropical storm, storm surge should still be expected throughout the Texas coast, where 3 to 5 feet is expected, right around Galveston and around the coast of Texas. So if you live around the coast, make sure to keep an eye out on storm surge flooding, as rainfall flooding shouldn't be the only thing you guys need to be concerned about. And this extends as far east as Louisiana as well, so keep that in mind as well. Now, in terms of anything else we're keeping track of in the Atlantic, you see that this is our next disturbance we're going to be watching, especially in the United States, because this could come uncomfortably close to the East Coast, where maybe we could see some impacts in North Carolina and may form into some type of subtropical storm within the next coming days. If we were to take a look at the forecast loop, you see that this surface low isn't moving much, but it is expected to move northward and have a moderate chance of developing. And what could inhibit this beyond North Carolina is the cooler water temperatures, because as you can see, if we move just north of the Gulf Stream, the temperatures drop below the 80-degree threshold, around 24 to 23 degrees Celsius. So it might make it more difficult for this storm to develop. However, if this storm deals with enough baroclinic influences and enough instability, once it heads to the northeast, it still could be quite a formidable storm, maybe a subtropical storm or an extratropical storm, or it might feel sort of like a nor'easter if this comes close enough. However, for those around North Carolina and South Carolina, there's going to be plenty of warm water for this storm to continue to develop. If this were to develop as a tropical storm, warm water shouldn't be a worry just south of North Carolina. However, just north of it, it's going to need some baroclinic influences to continue to maintain the strength of the storm. If you were to take a look at GFS model regarding the wind shear of the storm, you see that the storm is going to be in a little bit of an open area where the wind shear won't relatively be strong. It will be light for the most part, and that could create a strengthening environment, because you see in the next couple of days we see a low level center form just off the coast of North Carolina, and the wind shear is quite light. However, the wind shear to the north of it is definitely strong, but this storm might be able to maintain its strength if there's just enough instability in the northeast. Currently, the GFS model isn't expecting that much instability to continue to maintain strength of this storm to impact the northeast, and it's expected to steer the upper level winds are expected to steer the storm to the northeast. However, there's still a lot of uncertainty regarding where this upper level high will go, because if the upper level high or the Bermuda high was a little bit closer to the East Coast. You may see more impacts along the East Coast where heavy rain and potentially gusty winds along the coast could be the main concern. So make sure to keep that in mind about the East Coast. Taking a look at what the GFS model is currently expecting when it comes to precipitation, you see that it does bring a lower level center close to North Carolina, and while it misses the Northeast, there's still that possibility that it could come close enough if this upper level high lingers a little bit more. However, the most likely scenario is that this will move out to sea, but you certainly don't want to rule out all the possibilities. But make sure to at least be aware of this along the East Coast. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content. And I hope you guys have a great day.